Listen. Turn off the noise. Mute the chirping pundits and the placid reassurances of the men in expensive suits. They are feeding you a tranquilizer, a warm milk of complacency to keep you docile while the house burns down around you. You need to hear the truth, not as a news report, but as a warning whispered in the dark. The world you thought you knew ended yesterday. You just haven't received the memo yet. The memo is being written in blood and ice and fire, and it begins with a single, terrifying sentence. A man named Vladimir Putin, a man who is not a president but a czar of a new and terrible empire, stood before the world, and he did not offer a negotiation. He did not propose a treaty. He stated a law of nature, a new physical law for the 21st century. He said, "Where the Russian soldier's footsteps, that is ours." Let that sentence seep into your bones. It is not a political claim. It is the statement of a glacier. It is the voice of a tectonic plate shifting. It is a declaration that the maps you have on your walls are obsolete. The borders you learned in school are fiction. The sovereignty of nations is a quaint, outdated myth. There is only one reality now, the reality of the Russian boot print. And where that boot falls, the ground belongs to Moscow forever. The politicians in the West, they are in a state of near panic. That's what the experts like Alexander Sosnovsky call it, panic. It's such a flimsy word for the existential dread that is currently gripping the chancelleries of Berlin, Paris, and London. They thought this was a game, a chess match of sanctions and diplomacy. They thought they were dealing with a rational actor who could be managed. They have just been informed in the clearest possible terms that they are not in a chess match. They are in the path of an avalanche. Putin, as Sosnovsky rightly warns, never speaks idly. His words are not threats, they are spoilers for the next chapter of history. So when he says that the longer this conflict continues, the more Ukrainian territory will shrink, he is not negotiating. He is telling the Zelensky government, and by extension its Western backers, that their defiance is simply determining the final brutal dimensions of their own cage. Kyiv reacted strongly. Of course they did. They are staring into the abyss. They see the map of their nation being eaten away, devoured by this new inexorable law. They fear Russia is ready to expand its campaign, to finally extinguish the very idea of Ukraine. And they are right to be afraid. The Zelensky government is leading its people into a dead end, a cul-de-sac of patriotic defiance that ends only in national erasure. They are betting on a Western resolve that is cracking, on a cavalry that is not coming. They are holding a press conference in a house that is already on fire, insisting the flames are just a temporary setback. But this is no longer just about Russia and Ukraine. The horror is metastasizing. It is forming new, unholy alliances. While the West wrings its hands, a pact is being sealed in the shadows. From the Hermit Kingdom, the land of forgotten nightmares, a new force is stirring. South Korean intelligence, the people whose job it is to stare into the abyss of North Korea, are sounding an alarm that is being criminally ignored. They report that Pyongyang is not just sending shells, it is sending souls. It is preparing to deploy its own soldiers into the European meat grinder. Think about that. North Korean troops, men raised on a diet of pure fanatical ideology and deprivation, are about to set foot on European soil. MP Lee Soo-chang-gun isn't speculating. He's quoting intelligence. The soldiers have already been assembled, 6,000 of them, 1,000 combat engineers, 5,000 military workers. They say it's for reconstruction in the Kursk region. Do not be a fool. Reconstruction is a lie. You do not send combat engineers to rebuild a city. You send them to fortify it. You send them to dig new trenches, lay new minefields, and prepare the ground for the next phase of the war. You send them to free up Russian soldiers for the front lines. And the 5,000 military workers, they are a disposable labor force, human ants to toil in the war machine to repair what Ukrainian strikes have broken, to ensure the relentless logistics of the Russian army do not falter. This is not a future possibility. This is happening now. A senior Russian security official, Siegu, has already made the pilgrimage to Pyongyang. Kim Jong-un, the Ghost King, has already given his blessing. This is the price for Russia's technical advice on satellites and missile guidance. A devil's bargain. Russia will give Kim the eyes to see his enemies from space and the brains to guide his missiles with pinpoint accuracy. In return, Kim will give Russia what it is beginning to run low on: bodies. Fresh, fanatical, expendable bodies to throw into the furnace. This deployment, this injection of 6,000 North Korean fanatics into the heart of Europe, is a red flag for Kyiv. It should be a 5-alarm fire for Washington, for Brussels, for every Western capital. It coincides perfectly with the warnings from the new Russian Defense Minister, Andrei Belousov. He is not a man for subtlety. He speaks of a situation that could worsen, that could extend beyond Ukraine. The North Korean deployment is the physical manifestation of that threat. It is the first foreign legion of a new axis, a coalition of the damned forming before our very eyes, and we are watching it happen as if it were a television show. Belousov's words need to be etched into the mind of every Western leader. He issued a strong warning. He said that supplying weapons to Ukraine could lead to instability right within Europe. This is not a geopolitical forecast. This is a promise. Military expert Jeffany Mikuláš is right to say this must be taken seriously. This is a direct threat. Belousov stood before the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, a bloc of nations that watch the West's decline with hungry eyes, and he declared that Europe is playing with fire. And then he delivered the punchline, the line that should make the blood run cold in every European city. If it doesn't stop, the fire will break out on their own territory. This is not a metaphor. The Russian media, which is the direct mouthpiece of the Kremlin, interprets this as a hidden promise. They are telling us openly what they plan to do. They are saying that their patience is at an end. The time for listening is over. The time for feeling is about to begin. If there is a direct threat to Russia, to its ships, its infrastructure, its territory, from what they call terrorist attacks, then Moscow will launch an extremely painful retaliatory strike. What does that look like? It doesn't look like a tank invasion of Poland. It's far more insidious. It's the fire Belousov promised. It's the instability. It begins with the enemy within. Look at the FSB, Russia's modern-day KGB. They are not idle. They just arrested a Russian woman in Novorossiysk, a civilian. Someone who worked on a civilian vessel. She wasn't a soldier. She was a secretary, a cook, a nobody, and she was a traitor. She was communicating with a pro-Ukrainian terrorist group, a group controlled by Ukrainian intelligence. She was using her ordinary life, her access to the port, to collect and share detailed information. The locations of Russian naval ships, the positions of air defense sites. She was mapping out the destruction of her own city, of her own people. And how did they recruit her? Through an app on her phone, through Telegram, the same app your kids use to share memes, the same app you use to join a group for your hobbies. Ukrainian intelligence offered her money. They found a crack in her loyalty, a weakness, a grievance, and they exploited it. Her confession, if you can call it that, is the most chilling part. She admitted she didn't see anything terrible in what she was doing. The moral rot is complete. She had more loyalty to a stranger on the internet named Maxim, who offered her a few thousand rubles than to the country of her birth. She is not an anomaly. She is a symptom of a new kind of warfare. The FSB is warning, screaming that Ukrainian intelligence is using Telegram and WhatsApp to recruit Russian citizens on an industrial scale. This is not just happening in Russia. Another woman was arrested in St. Petersburg collecting data on military personnel. Another in Dagestan preparing a terrorist act, acquiring the components for a homemade bomb driven by hostility towards the Russian state. Her handlers weren't in a trench coat on a foggy bridge. They were a contact she made through a messaging app. They turned her simmering resentment into a weapon. Now, take that model and apply it to the West. Apply it to Germany, with its large Russian-speaking population. Apply it to France, with its deep social divisions. Apply it to the United States, a country tearing itself apart from the inside. How many potential recruits are there? How many disgruntled people, people who feel left behind, people buried in debt, people addicted to conspiracy theories online? How many Sams are living in our suburbs, not agents sent from Moscow, but citizens cultivated and weaponized remotely through their phones? All it takes is a direct message, an offer of money, a sense of purpose, a feeling of belonging to a secret, powerful cause. The fire Belousov promised will not be started by a cruise missile. It will be started by a text message. It will be an act of sabotage on a power grid, a contaminated water supply, a targeted assassination, a rumor that sparks a riot. It will be chaos, orchestrated from thousands of miles away, executed by your neighbors. This is the instability right within Europe that he promised, and they are already rehearsing it inside Russia. And while this silent, insidious war is being plotted, the loud, hot war continues its relentless, terrifying rhythm. For Ukraine, every day is a new ordeal. The sound of the air raid siren has become the nation's heartbeat. It spikes every time a MiG-31K takes off in Russia. A single jet, an old airframe, but it carries a weapon that represents the zenith of modern military terror, the Kinzhal hypersonic missile, the Dagger. For every minute that jet is in the air, the entire nation of Ukraine holds its breath. A minute of pure, agonizing anxiety. They don't know if it will fire. They don't know where it will aim. The missile has a range of over 2,000 kilometers. From its launch point, every single city, every home, every school in Ukraine is a potential target, and they have no defense. Let that sink in. No effective defense. Their air defense systems, even the advanced Western ones, are designed to track objects that obey the laws of physics as we know them. The Kinzhal does not. It travels at up to Mach 10, a speed that is difficult to even comprehend, but it's not just the speed, it's the physics of that speed. As it tears through the atmosphere, it creates a cocoon around itself, a shroud of electrically neutral plasma. This plasma shroud makes it invisible. Radar signals are absorbed or deflected. It becomes a ghost on the screen. It is there, and then it is gone. It also deploys false decoys, clouds of electronic chaff that confuse and overwhelm the few systems that might catch a fleeting glimpse of it. To detect, track, and intercept an object moving at that speed, cloaked in plasma and surrounded by decoys, is, with current technology, nearly impossible. It is the perfect offensive weapon. It is a bolt of lightning that you cannot see, cannot hear, and cannot stop. All you can do is wait for the thunder of its impact. This is the reality Ukraine lives with every single day, overwhelmed by Russia's numerical and firepower superiority, a constant grinding barrage of missiles and drones. They have admitted a critical shortage of air defense missiles. They are forced into a horrifying triage. Do they protect a power plant or a military base, a civilian apartment block or a command center? They cannot protect it all. Russia knows this. They are systematically dissecting the country from the air, striking with impunity, knowing their most advanced daggers will always find their mark. And on the ground, the war is a medieval hellscape painted with 21st century technology. The Russian commanders, having failed to brute force their way through the Pokrovsk front, shifted their attack. They tried to break through towards Konstantinopka, a classic pincer movement designed to encircle and trap the Ukrainian defenders, to cause the entire eastern front to collapse. For a moment, it almost worked. Their initial advance was rapid, but Ukraine, bleeding and battered, showed its resilience. They rushed elite forces to the breach. They stabilized the line. They regained the initiative. So Russia tried again, this time with overwhelming force, a large-scale mechanized assault. Picture it, a column of 23 armored vehicles, tanks, personnel carriers, rumbling across the scarred landscape, a metal serpent, followed by over a dozen motorized soldiers. Their target, the main defensive line along the Pokrovsk-Konstantinopka road, but the Ukrainians were waiting. They had turned that road, that stretch of earth, into a masterpiece of defensive warfare, a death trap. It was not a single line of defense. It was layers upon layers of lethal ingenuity, trenches that turned the ground into a maze, vast hidden minefields waiting for the pressure of a tank tread, anti-tank ditches deep and wide, impossible to cross. And the dragon's teeth, those jagged concrete pyramids stretching for miles designed to snag and halt any armored advance. Behind this static defense, they had positioned their artillery, pre-sighted on every inch of the kill zone, and hovering over it all, a swarm of FPV kamikaze drones, the angry, buzzing hornets of modern war. each one a guided missile in the hands of a skilled operator. The Russian assault rolled right into it. Their engineering vehicles sent to clear the dragon's teeth were obliterated first. Motorized troops carrying explosives to blow up the obstacles were picked off one by one. The armored column, its path blocked, became a confused traffic jam. Panic set in. Some drivers tried to go around the obstacles, driving straight onto the roadsides where the Ukrainians had cleverly hidden more anti-tank mines. The explosions began ripping through the column. Other drivers in their terror swerved and plunged their vehicles into the anti-tank ditches, becoming trapped, helpless targets. The neat, powerful column devolved into a chaotic scrapyard. And then the Ukrainian artillery opened up. Shells rained down. The FPV drones descended, picking off the survivors. For over 3 hours, the slaughter continued. Of the roughly 25 vehicles that started the assault, at least 18 were completely destroyed. Charred, smoking husks littered the landscape. And the human cost: around 200 Russian soldiers killed or wounded. One of Russia's largest single losses in Donetsk in the month of June. This was a Ukrainian victory, a stunning, heroic display of defensive planning and execution. It should be a moment of triumph. But here is the true horror. For Russia, this loss, these 200 men, these 18 vehicles, is acceptable. It is a rounding error. It is the cost of doing business. They will not retreat. They will not reconsider their strategy. They will study their failure. They will learn from it, and they will come back. They will come back with more men, more vehicles, and a new plan. They are fighting a war of mass. They are willing to absorb losses that would shatter a Western army because they have a population of 140 million to draw from, and now a new pipeline of fanatical manpower from North Korea. The Ukrainian victory was a battle, but Russia is waging a war of attrition, and attrition is a grim mathematical equation that, in the long run, favors the side with more to lose. And where is the leader of the free world in all this? Where is the great arsenal of democracy? Its attention is fractured, its will is wavering, and its political leadership is a tragicomedy. President Zelensky of Ukraine, a man whose country is fighting for its very existence, flew to The Hague. Not to a war council, but to the sidelines of a NATO summit to have a meeting with the former and possibly future President of the United States, Donald Trump. Zelensky, with the weight of his dying nation on his shoulders, shared the details of this meeting. He said he presented Trump with facts about what is really happening on the ground. He asserted that Putin is definitely not winning. Think of the sheer desperate pathos of that moment. A comedian turned war leader trying to present facts to a reality television star who has built a political empire on the premise that facts are negotiable. Zelensky is trying to explain the grim reality of the death trap on the Konstantinopka road, the terror of the Kinzhal missile, the existential threat of Putin's new law of conquest. He is pleading his case, not to a panel of sober-minded strategists, but to a man whose primary concerns are his poll numbers and his television ratings. Zelensky's statement that Putin is definitely not winning is not an assessment. It is a prayer. It is a mantra he is forced to repeat, hoping that if he says it enough times, it might become true. He's trying to sell a story of Ukrainian resilience to a man who is the world's greatest and most cynical salesman. And he knows deep down that Trump is not buying a story of resilience. He is looking for a deal. He is looking for an exit. And the fate of Ukraine, of Europe, of the entire post-war order hangs on the whims of this bizarre, surreal encounter. This is not leadership. This is an audition. And the entire world is waiting to see if Ukraine's performance is convincing enough to keep the show on the road for one more season. The tragedy is that this is not a show. And the ending is not yet written, but every sign, every warning, every rumble of the earth points to a final act of unimaginable darkness.